Good day, my name is Richard Hift, and if I were to describe myself, I'd say I'm a third generation medical professional. Both my father and both his parents were doctors before me. Perhaps the most interesting thing is that my father spent his entire professional life here at this university, the then University of Natal as it was, in this very building where we are sitting today. And over the years, during his career, many students passed through his hands who have gone on to become very important people in the medical and the political world today. So it's been my pleasure over the years to have Ministers of Health, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, Dr. Motsoaledi, previous Vice-Chancellor of this university, people of that stature come to me and say, "Excuse me, are you related to that Walter Hift that taught me all those years ago?" And the answer is, of course, yes. I was his son. And some of my earliest memories were coming here when I was perhaps 4, 5, or even 6 years old, to see him at work. Well, I went on to finish school here in KZN, went down to Cape Town where I studied at UCT. It was a result of apartheid, in actual fact, that I wasn't actually allowed to study at the University of Natal. So I went off to UCT and studied there, specialized in internal medicine there, developed an interest in research, subspecialized in liver disease, that's hepatology, and also developed a research career in a rare condition called porphyria. That's a genetic disorder affecting both skin as well as the general body, potentially fatal, with a complication known as the acute attack, which happens to be probably the commonest genetic disorder here in South Africa. So, found everywhere through the world, though uncommon, except in this country where it is quite prevalent. And it was actually in that field that I got my PhD. Well, in due course, the call came to return to Durban. So I was recruited to come back here as head of the Department of Medicine. And it's a decision which I have never ever regretted. This university has given me such opportunities to extend myself, I once described it at a meeting of the senators. It gave me a blank canvas on which to paint, which was an absolutely wonderful opportunity. So while I've been here, I've developed and furthered many of my interests: research, education, and of course clinical practice. Even though I did subspecialize in liver disease, I've never lost for my interest and my love for general medicine. That's general internal medicine, specializing in heart disease and lung disease and a lot of HIV/AIDS and all that sort of thing. Particularly as that's one of the areas in which one comes most in contact with our undergraduate students training to be doctors and our postgraduate students specializing in internal medicine. It's the area in which you have the most contact with them, and I've always felt the area in which I can make the biggest impact by developing a new generation that sees medicine, sees the need for service to our communities in the way that I do. From head of medicine, I went on to become dean for a period of 5 years, which again gave me this wonderful opportunity to develop things, along with tremendous challenges, but that's the story for another day. And since then, I've increasingly now evolved into a role which I find personally extremely satisfying, which is very much one of elder statesman mentorship, sharing my experience, sharing my passion for everything I do with all of my colleagues. Regularly have senior colleagues just wanting to run something by me for that bit of advice. I love to help them. I love to feel that I'm contributing to the growth of their own careers. And the same all the way down, right down to students. It's a passion now. It gives me the greatest of pleasure. So what is my daily duties? Well, I continue to provide medical services in the wards of Victoria and Kleinge Hospital, which used to be King Edward Hospital, treading in the footsteps of my father, and I find that immensely satisfying. I continue to teach at both undergraduate and postgraduate level, and over the years I've developed a very strong interest in education, but education with a slant, particularly what it is that makes the medical professional an expert doctor, and secondly, how do we learn? Once one starts going into those things, you start getting tremendous insights into ways that we can in fact teach students better and ways in which they can learn better. Perhaps again, this is not the place to go into the details, but understanding expertise and the fact that it is very much something based on years of experience, not on factual knowledge alone, not even on some advanced skill in reasoning or thinking through, but the ability to fall back on a vast treasure trove of resources that you've built up in your brain over 10, 15, 20, 25, or even 30 years of practice has led me increasingly to teach students differently. Breadth rather than depth. Understanding and putting things together across the chapters of the textbook instead of narrow knowledge about what's in this chapter and that chapter and that chapter, because that seems to be what leads people to this expert understanding of medicine that we'd like them to have. So that's my education and practice. But then the third is research. For a number of years now, the position in this school of academic leader of research, which is a sort of deputy dean of research, has been needing somebody to fill it. So I stepped into that role and acting, and I'm now in my second year of acting. But acting most definitely doesn't mean not committed or just temporary. It's just that I have now reached retirement age and the university has been kind enough to keep me on. And I feel it's my job now to keep that post successful, working well, until one of my younger colleagues can step into it. So in that position, along with the administration that comes, the greatest benefit for me has been that it gives me a very wide insight to what's going on in the school in terms of research. Not only our successes, but also our weaknesses. So I'm able to pick that up and then start working along with colleagues, along with our dean and others, to correct that and to build a very strong basis for research in the school. For example, one of the things that's become very clear to me is that medical doctors, such as the ones we produce, are excellent medical doctors. That's what they are trained for. But I've increasingly realized that does not necessarily mean an excellent researcher. I mentioned earlier my interest in how people learn, and what's become very clear to me is that the expert clinician reasons differently from the expert researcher, which is why they are expert clinicians. But what that means is it's not very easy to transfer over to high quality research. There's a certain amount of unlearning of the thinking processes that make you an expert doctor in order to take that next step of becoming an expert researcher. Just one example, doctors are trained to make quick, intuitive judgments very quickly based on experience, even with a whole lot of missing information. Very often when I see a patient and all the tests are not there, the information's not there, but I can't wait, I have to make a plan. And that of course is completely inappropriate and not allowed in the area of research. You jump to conclusions, you work off evidence that is as yet incomplete, and so on. So a lot of my interest is in how we design training for clinically qualified people such as myself to unlock that full research potential that is in them. For the last 10 years or so, the Health Professions Council has required all our specialist trainees, we know them as Master of Medicine students, to perform research. And initially there was an awful lot of challenges in dealing with that. But increasingly we're getting there. And I like to think at least part of it is that we're actually now starting to understand how the challenges arise and why they arise and what we can do about that. And there's no doubt that our graduates, the profession and our school, will be very much the better for it once we get all of these things ironed out. So it's my absolute pleasure to see year by year by year growth in the output of research in our school, a growth in the quality of the research, but perhaps most importantly of all, a growth in the interest. People are well, we've always had very good researchers here and people are very interested. But what is nice to see is an ever widening pool of my colleagues and our students developing an interest in research, phoning me up and asking, can I help them with something? Could I come and do some seminars with their department? Or could I arrange school and college-wide seminars where we discuss about these research interests? And I suppose if you sum up both education and training in anything, including medicine and research, the nicest thing for a person as you get older is to get the sense that others are starting to share your passion and that you're actively unblocking and assisting them in developing the potential that really is there. We have some really fine students in this medical school and this university, undergraduate and postgraduate, and we've got a very fine crop of academic heads of discipline. Some are young, perhaps somewhat inexperienced, but developing that experience very quickly. But there's no doubt that there was a period when we were a little bit in the doldrums, quite a few years back now, and where the place was not the happiest place that it could be. I'm so happy now to see that that really is different. The spirit in the school is so positive, people are cooperative, they are enjoying working here, they're working with others. Really, you get a sense now when you attend school meetings and board meetings that we are really a united group of people all pulling in the right direction. I like to think I've laid some of the foundation for that, but I really do want to compliment Professor KwaZulu-Natal and our current Dean, Professor Len Marais, who have really taken that forward to make this a much happier place, a much more successful place, and one I think that has a very bright future.